Morning and welcome to the first webinar of the 2024 Innovation in Motion webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar focuses on how PennDOT is maximizing the use of technology by developing applications to aid its employees and transportation partners work more efficiently. We hope the information shared today will positively inspire ideas to gain that extra edge on the job and in the transportation community. My name is Jacqueline Huss with PennDOT's Bureau of Innovations, and I am your moderator for today's session. Before we get started, I want to review a few important housekeeping items. All attendees are muted during this webinar session. If you need closed captioning, please select the closed captioning icon in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. A question-answer period will follow today's presentation. If you have any questions during today's session, please use the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to submit your questions. One professional development hour will be awarded for attending today's webinar. If you would like to receive the professional development hour credit, please click on the link in the chat box to complete the survey and submit your information. Before we begin, please be advised that this session is being recorded. If you ask a question or comment in the chat box during the session, please note that by doing so, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and use of your statements recorded as part of this session. I'd like to kick things off with introducing our speakers for today. Our first presenter today is Mike Ballinger, Program Analyst and PennDOT's Bureau of Planning and Research. Mike will discuss the development of the Highway Performance Monitoring System, also known as HPMS, mobile application to support metropolitan planning organizations as well as PennDOT employees. We will also hear from Ian Dedamore, Program Manager in PennDOT's Bureau of Public Transportation. Ian will discuss the use of Microsoft Power BI to support transit agency oversight, as well as data connectivity, accessibility, and improved processes. Learn how applications were streamlined and automated, resulting in improved accuracy and response times, as well as time and cost savings. Welcome, Mike and Ian, and thanks for being with us today.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike Ballinger and I'm a program analyst with PennDOT, and I work in the section to submit the Highway Performance Monitoring System. That's an annual submittal to the Federal Highway Administration, and it is an inventory of samples of roads within the Commonwealth. Today I'm going to talk to you about a new app that we recently designed and begun using, called the HPMS mobile app. So through discussions with planning partners and engineering districts, we decided that we needed a more streamlined approach to the sample reviews and to move away from the current manual paper process for a more efficient approach in the sample review efforts. We wanted to allow attribute data from HPMS sample sections to be entered electronically in a form while our planning partners were on site and taking a look at the roads. So we wanted to replace a flow of paper to spreadsheet to RMS, which is our roadway management system, with electronic survey forms instead. We also wanted to integrate the system with the existing GIS that we use and provide a map-based front end for the users to correctly locate the HPMS sample section that was going to be inventoried. We wanted to provide users access to additional data and systems to enhance the data collection process. We wanted to provide a dashboard for supervisors to review and accept the data, along with providing a collection status, and we wanted to enhance the data collection efficiency through automation. So here's kind of a look at what you would see using an iPad if you're a user of our HPMS mobile. So we developed this with vendor GeoDecisions, and this introduces an all-electronic method for collecting and reviewing HPMS sample data through the ArcGIS Survey 123 platform. and that's an Esri product. It's already in use by our engineering districts for our summer stamp program, which is a similar program that collects pavement, guide rail, and drainage data, much like we do with HPMS samples. So in utilizing this by providing real-time coordinates for the districts and the planning partners that are out in the field, as well as pre-populating the previous submittals information when conducting a survey, it enables us to see enormous cost and time saving from the previous method of just using paper packets and then physically mailing in the results to central office. When our bureau thought of the process of the old workflow, they first diagrammed how the app should work. So gathering the samples, distributing the samples, and then allowing user input to edit those is the initial component. And then once it is submitted, then changes may require the district supervisors to review the data, and ultimately they are all sent to us in central office for final review and export to our RMS. So here's a look within just the desktop section of HPMS Mobile. There's kind of two components. There's the actual mobile app and then a web view that you can access. And this is just for assigning samples. So those users who are designated as the supervisors for their area can select, view, and assign samples to their staff in an interactive environment. So for example, we also have buttons that we can view the samples on other PennDOT apps that we have, such as OneMap or Tire, which is our traffic information repository. And that can be useful for creating maps, printouts, referencing traffic, road, and signal data, and overall planning of sample collection sequencing when those partners are out in the field. And then we also have search fields and filters, which allow the end user to easily locate specific samples or sort by different statuses or categories. So then while you have the iPad open with the app, basically what would happen after those samples are assigned, it's super easy. Just the end user can hit refresh, and then it'll automatically retrieve all of those samples that their supervisor had assigned them. So here's a look at an example sample to show what you would see just kind of scrolling through a tablet. So initially you'll see an interactive map which contains a pinned location and coordinates which can be copied and pasted. And this is really helpful just for also referencing certain things that are needed within the sample. If you're confirming accurate intersections, things like that. There is the ability to upload an optional picture if there's any clarification or questions from field staff, and there's plenty of space as well to add comments in text within the data categories. So all of these, what are referred to as data items, you can see they're neatly organized with last year's data auto-populated within the survey itself. So here the green bars that you're seeing means that there's no change from the previous year. When a value is changed, the bar will turn red, which is helpful when you're in the office and you are analyzing and reviewing the samples to easily distinguish. If you're not super familiar with HPMS, some data items have numeric values and some are coded. So in these instances, what we employed is there is a drop-down box with the code, and the descriptions for the codes are also provided. And this reduces more time spent out in the field, just cross-checking with field guides or cheat sheets. It just makes it more easier for whoever's collecting data. And the same also exists with checkboxes and descriptions for widening obstacles. And here back to the that web section. of the app. This is a web dashboard that allows real-time review and edits by supervisors before submitting the completed samples to central office for analysis. So we utilize graphs, charts, and maps within the dashboard, and now that enables easy visualization for organization and data reconciliation among all users. But it's also used by BPR staff to inspect samples for their final approval upon completion. The update process is streamlined, so if there are no updates to the data, it's immediately sent through to RMS and updated accordingly. But if there are changes, it will have to wait and be exported to the RMS mainframe in a process that is run over the weekend. Of course, with all new programs will come some roadblocks and growing pains. Some of the challenges we faced included getting our planning partners set up with our CWAPA accounts for vendors specifically, as well as the new ArcGIS online accounts. And especially as our CWAPA accounts require password resets after a certain period of time. And of course, there's just, often challenges of coordinating a large list of new accounts, just generally. Additionally, due to the districts participating in the summer stamp program already that I had mentioned, they may already have a separate AGOL account, that's the ArcGIS online account, and sometimes that added a point of confusion. Of course, just initial installation and updates with the surveys in the app could be kind of a challenge. But at this point, now that we've been using it for a bit, if there's any lingering issues, it's just typically user error based. Another challenge, some of the smaller MPOs or counties were kind of reluctant to buy a tablet just because of cost. We have found that smartphones are a viable solution, and some of the smaller counties do utilize those. And also because some of the MPOs subcontract out to external firms, that just requires additional app training and installation, just because of the same way that I've mentioned above about how that can just kind of be difficult to manage. Another challenge, some of the engineering districts that are required to review and approve the planning partner surveys, it could take them a while. They could leave it sit on the back burner. So that would just leave us waiting a little bit in central office. And data items within HPMS, this is more of just an HPMS specific challenge, but sometimes different planning partners or counties might just kind of view different data items in different ways. But fortunately, there have been multiple benefits that we have realized with utilizing this new app. And chiefly among them, well, it saves enormous amounts of time collecting sample data. So more samples ultimately can be collected during one day in the field. Less time is also spent occupying the right-of-way, so therefore it's safer for our staff and it minimizes any possible traffic distractions. It saves paper and postage by supplies and service costs, as well as time savings with instant sample delivery. It saves time in the office analyzing samples, whether in the engineering districts or us in central office. We've noticed increased data accuracy because of the inherent programming logic in place, electronic organization, and the ease of reference helps to double check any typos or errors. And then finally, it saves a lot of physical storage space in the office where previous years are filed away with reams and reams of paper that were used. And so if you have any questions, I have my contact information listed here. You can feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for joining me today for this presentation on the Bureau of Public Transportation's use of Microsoft Power Platform. My name is Ian Dedamore. I'm a program manager for the Bureau of Public Transportation, and I'll be taking you through the Bureau's efforts in this area. For some overview on the presentation, we'll start with a little bit more information about who am I. We'll talk about what the Bureau of Public Transportation does, what is Microsoft Power Platform, what in Microsoft Power Platform we'll be focusing on, the scope of this presentation, where did the Bureau of Public Transportation start, what problems did we need to solve, and then we'll move into the second half of the presentation, which is where are we now, how did we get there, what challenges we faced along the way, where do we want to go from here, and I'll wrap things up with a high-level summary. So, who am I? My name is Ian Dedamore. I am a program manager with the Bureau of Public Transportation, specifically working as in the Planning and Project Delivery Division, and I started with PennDOT in January 2017. My primary duties are to support a small number of agencies in District 3, specifically Clinton, Lycoming, Bradford, Sullivan, and Tioga counties. I support the Bureau's technology projects, and relevant to this presentation, I support and lead our data analysis efforts. For a little bit of background on where I'm coming from, I have a bachelor's in mathematics, but it's important to note I do not have any formal training in data analysis, and I only took a single programming class, Intro to Java, in my education. So I thought that was important to highlight, given what we'll be talking about, that a depth of experience coming into using these tools is not necessary. So what does the Bureau of Public Transportation do? We oversee public transportation across the Commonwealth, overseeing grant funding and program compliance for more than 50 grantees who provide service in all 67 counties. We provide subsidies for both operating and capital assets, and we fund programs to reduce costs for transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities. On a data and reporting side, we collect annual financial and statistical data from those grantees, which is then used to drive our formula funding as well as our discretionary grant decisions. And we also are required to produce reports annually for the Federal Transit Administration, as well as the Pennsylvania legislature. So what is Microsoft Power Platform? That is an ecosystem of applications that support low-code solutions for businesses, intended to make complex solutions available for organizations that may not have highly skilled technical staff available. It's made up of 5 applications and the supporting systems. So the 5 applications are Power BI, which Power Automate, Power Apps, Power Pages, and Power Virtual Agents. Power BI is a desktop application for data analysis and report development, but it also has a premium workspace available for sharing your reports, either internally or with the public, depending on your settings. Power Automate is a cloud-based application for workflow and process automation, a tool for writing scripts. Power Apps is a cloud-based tool for the development of end-user applications. Power Pages is an external-facing website builder. And Power Virtual Agents are customizable conversational chatbots. Think the chat that pops up when you're interacting with your internet service provider's website. The supporting systems are the data connectors, the AI builder, and the Dataverse. The data connectors are kind of the backbone for Microsoft Power Platform. It's a library of pre-built interfaces between Power Platform and a host of other applications. The AI builder is a low to no code language modeler. Think entry-level AI, and Dataverse is a cloud-based enterprise data platform, databasing for enterprises, for businesses. For this presentation, the scope will be focused on 3 applications and 1 supporting system. Power BI is the primary focus of this presentation with the reports that we've developed. Power Automate and Power Apps will be referenced in how they support the use of Power BI. Data connectors will not be mentioned as a part of this presentation, but they are a part of the core of all 3 of the use of all 3 of those applications, and the other applications were not used by the Bureau of Public Transportation for any of this work. So where did we start? We have a number of systems that we interact with for data collection and reporting, and these systems were difficult to get data out of. We had little to no ability to query against them. And in order to do the work that we did, we had to maintain a variety of Excel spreadsheets, templates, and various documents like that. And because of that, because of the disjointed Excel spreadsheets that we had to maintain, it resulted in a large and complex folder structure that was often challenging for new hires to navigate. And from a process perspective, all of these templates, all of these workbooks that we were working in required a lot of repetitive manual updates and data entry, manual analysis work. And this resulted in some issues. First and foremost, we had little ability to ask new questions, to do ad hoc analysis to see what if we looked at something in this way. And if we did, then it was often a one-off question that we'd be able to answer, because it would require a fair amount of work to answer those sorts of questions, and the results would be for that specific time frame, for that specific data set we were looking at. And so when that question came up again, we would have to decide, is it worth doing that work again to respond to that question? Similarly, whenever there was an urgent data request, depending on the complexity of it, we were sometimes limited in our ability to respond to requests from legislature or for the governor's office if it wasn't a part of our normal standard data collection. And all those manual processes, those manual updates to templates, all of that was a significant time investment. Some of the tasks we did required all hands on deck for a significant time investment for all program managers. And sometimes the managers would provide additional support as well, given the level of effort for some of the reports we were developing. And a completely unmet need was our systems were isolated from each other. We could not do analysis or do reporting that relied on data from our different data sets. And we saw this as a gap that needed to be resolved. And we've made significant progress in this area, actually. Most of our manual updates are gone, and the majority of our manual processes come down to doing exports or our qualitative items, comment entry, things like that can't be effectively automated. Most of our factors that we look at for performance metricing and for data tracking are automated. So they're always available to us anytime we want to look at them. Because of all of the automation that we've done, there has been a significant reduction in the amount of time that program managers need to spend on any one of these activities. And because of that, we were able to introduce new processes into our reviews, new ways that we are able to support the activities of our transit agency partners. And it still has less net time investment than what we were facing before. And we also centralized our data collection and processing. It used to be that each individual program manager was responsible for their own data analysis, their own data collection, their own data processing, and then we would join the results up at a later date. Now all of that happens in a single centralized location, reducing the amount of staff time and effort that goes into any one of our processes. We were also able to significantly expand the available data sources. We now include data from the state legislature for joining the districts against transit agency service areas, and we deployed the Find My Ride ecosystem of applications to get information and booking available to the public. And those sites have Google Analytics embedded in them, and we were able to pull the Google Analytics data for all three of the websites into a single centralized report. And almost all of our updates are automatic, whether that's a scheduled update or scripted to trigger on certain actions that a program manager or other Bureau staff might take. Our KPIs and metrics are calculated dynamically, so we can slice and dice them in numerous new ways that we weren't able to before, and they'll automatically update. We're able to do analysis across different data sources. The screenshot here on the left, the lower one, shows comparisons between a reporting system and our data warehouse, which we'll mention a little bit later, to compare the accuracy of reporting against actual operational data. We're able to perform ad hoc queries. It's fairly trivial for us to develop new metrics and KPIs now. And when we do develop those, they're reusable. So they don't have to be one-off questions that we answer anymore. And the results are fairly easy for us to share, whether that's exports out of the reports, screenshots, PDF exporting. The options are quite broad for us now. But getting here was not trivial, to say the least. And it all started with one program manager, my coworker, Virginio. When he came on, he saw that some of the challenges that we were facing with our annual review process and wanted to simplify this, and he leveraged Power BI to do so. The screenshot that you see on the left here is the most recent version of the report that he developed that we now call our Universal Business Report. And the results were incredible, better than we would have expected. It made some of the processes that we had so much easier to maintain from year to year, and made it much easier to pick out items that needed follow-up in our review process than it was in the past. And management was very excited by the possibilities that this report provided, and so wanted to see more. But we weren't immediately certain where to go next until we had implemented our data warehouse. We did a statewide deployment of software for transit agencies, and a part of that, the operational data for those agencies is stored in a central database that the Commonwealth hosts. And this opened up the possibility for a whole new realm of reporting and analysis that we would never have dreamed of being able to do previously. And it gave us our first use cases for more automation and pre-processing of data, some things that I'll talk about a little later on. And as we developed new reports, people wanted to know more. What other data sets could we connect to? What other reports could we develop? What other processes could we simplify or eliminate? So COVID-19 introduced some new challenges that we had to address. We needed to connect to new data sets, such as the Department of Health's case counts by region, as well as new reporting, such as the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on ridership. And from a teleworking perspective, the stability issues that some of you may remember during the early days of teleworking was a challenge that we needed to navigate. We also started to see gaps in the data. The more we wanted to know, the more those started to show. And so we started leveraging other Power Suite applications to navigate those gaps in data collection. One example was being able to see program manager comments on data changes to explain why a transit agency might have seen an increase or decrease in expenses or statistics that wasn't initially available in the business report. And so in this screenshot on the right, you see an image from our Bureau of Public Transportation application for review comment entry. And this allowed us to meet that gap, and then the comments that are entered here by program managers display in the business report. And the solutions became a part of our standard process. The Universal Business Report is the first report that folks in the Bureau turn to when trying to answer a question. And if there's a question that can't be answered from the data in that report, then we look to see, do new reports need to be developed? And once they're developed, if they're answering a long-term question that might come up again, we see how can we incorporate that functionality, that data, into the original report so that the universal report remains the core of our business needs. But getting there, we faced, as I mentioned, several challenges. One of the first ones was the accessibility of our reports, especially via the VPN when folks were working from home. When a Power BI report is saved to a user's local device, it's not an easy matter to share. They're typically too large to be sent via email, and the workspaces that are available to users by default require premium licensing in order to share from one user to the next. And if you save a report to a network drive, such as the P drive, they can be modified by end users unintentionally. When they have access to that, they have access to the raw measures and to the pages, and so can accidentally delete or change calculations without meaning to. And so to navigate this, early on, we procured a premium workspace in the, originally it was the OA tenant, but now we're in PennDOT's workspace for Power BI. And the reports that are loaded there are end user reports. You can control who has edit access to them. And even if someone does have edit access, whoever has the original local copy can always override any changes that are made very, very easily. And an unintended side effect that proved quite useful was that the reports actually loaded faster when they're accessed via the Power BI service and don't require a connection to the VPN to access when someone is off-site working from home. Another challenge we faced was data sources that we could not find a way to connect to directly. SAP has been our biggest challenge in that area, as evidenced by the flow chart that we have here on screen. And for those systems that do have the ability to connect to, some may require cost prohibitive development or time prohibitive development to actually build those connections. And so we needed a way to work around that. In this case, what we did was we saved exports to cloud storage. So we run a report in SAP and then save the results of that to a spreadsheet in SharePoint. And then we utilize a Power Automate script to update the Power BI data set. So that allows us to get SAP data into our reports without actually having a direct to the database connection. As mentioned, the availability of data with the review comments I mentioned before, was an issue, and so we needed to find a way to navigate this, and we used the BPT app, as I mentioned. This is actually built on the back of a number of SharePoint lists that we developed that are then interacted with via the BPT application. And this gives us full customization of our data sets. So any data element that we need that isn't collected by one of ours or another organization's system, we can get through the BPT app and our SharePoint lists. And then Power Automate scripts and scheduled refreshes make sure that any changes that are made to these data sets are automatically incorporated into the Power BI reports. Another issue we faced was complex and large data analysis. Large data sets, complex transformations with lots of steps and large numbers of queries result in long refresh times and frequent failures. The data warehouse that I mentioned previously currently has more than 500 gigabytes of data into it. And our initial queries would run for hours on end and then fail because they were too large. So we implemented data flows. That's a Power BI workspace feature. It allows you to do smaller numbers of transformations at a time, break the work into more manageable chunks for the system, which limits the amount of data that needs to be loaded, the number of steps that need to be taken, and speeds up the processes. And so we were able to take that 500 gigabyte data set and pull down 4 gigabytes of processed and aggregated data for the purposes of our reports and analysis. So where does the Bureau want to go from here? Well, first and foremost, we want to get rid of any of our workarounds for data connectivity. We want all of the data that we need available to us via direct connections. It's a high-level goal that will be difficult to achieve, but we're always looking for ways that we can move forward in that. We're also looking to reduce or eliminate the data sources with duplicate data in it. We've made significant strides in that area as a part of building the reports we have to date, but there is still some duplicate data collection going on, and we're looking to reduce or eliminate that as we can. We also want to make our data more available to others. Currently, all of the reports we've developed, all the work that we do is only easily available to the Bureau staff. And some of the work would be of great benefit to our transit agency partners and to the public. So we're looking to see where and how can we do that in the most appropriate manner. And then we're looking to minimize or eliminate any of our manual processes wherever we can. So that's looking at automating our reconciliation, review, and reporting wherever that's reasonable to achieve. There are certain things such as the explanatory comments that can't reasonably be automated away, but we're still looking to see what other things can be. And then further centralizing our data processing. There are still some data collection and analysis that happens outside of this process, and we're looking to incorporate that into our total data analysis and warehousing process. And then we want to, as mentioned, make this open to our grantees for planning work. We want to promote regional and statewide analysis through these centralized data sets. Many agencies only have access to their own data, and an organization like an MPO or an RPO might have some access to multiple agencies worth of data, but most likely not to the degree that we have access to it. And our hope is to make that analytics work available to grantees and organizations that would not have access to those resources, whether from a cost or staff time perspective. And for those agencies that do have access to those resources, it would be a great benefit if they could save time or save money by being able to piggyback off of the work that we're doing. So, as a final summary, Microsoft Power Platform is a cloud-based ecosystem of applications that support low-code solutions for business. But by no means is it the only solution. There are many business intelligence, workflow automation, and application development tools that are available. Microsoft Power Platform is simply just what was accessible to us. And the more data that you have, the more complex the analysis that you want to do, the more reporting that you want to be able to do, the more you're going to benefit from deploying software like this. Power Platform does not require technical expertise to leverage. And for the items that may be more complex, they have a wide variety of training materials available, and a simple web search can answer most other questions. And the Power Platform functions are often available for little or no additional cost. Power BI itself, if you're just looking to take advantage of the desktop functionality, is free. Power Apps and Power Automate are included with an Office 365 business subscription, which many organizations may already have. And Power Platform solutions can be deployed quickly and with a significantly smaller staff time investment than many other that may have been possible previously. And these solutions can eliminate time-consuming processes. Processes that once took hours, in our case, some of them have been reduced down to taking mere minutes. As I mentioned before, my name is Ian Dedamore, Program Manager with the Bureau. My contact information is here in the slide, and if you have any questions about Power Platform, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope this has been helpful.
Mike and Ian, thank you for your presentations and providing an informative look at PennDOT's transformational transportation applications. It's great to hear how PennDOT is developing applications and automating processes to improve accuracy and provide time and cost savings. Now we'd like to hear from you, our audience members. If you have a question for Mike or Ian, please enter it via the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And Rose, we see your hand up, so if you don't mind, if you have a question, if you could just put that in the chat box, that'd be great. So Anya from the Bureau of Innovation is going to read our questions for us today. And while we're waiting for the questions to come in, please direct your attention to the chat box. If you would like to be awarded 1 PDH credit for your participation today, please click on the link and complete the short survey. So now back to our questions. Mike and Ian, please unmute yourselves. Anya, what questions do we have in the chat?
All righty. I see one question in here for Mike. Can Mike compare the old process to the new mobile app?
Yeah, the old method involved having the users print out sheets for each sample segment that we had, and it was often multiple sheets per sample. And they would be out in the field, and they would mark with pen their observations and measurements for each data item. And then they would get back and they would take all of those physical stacks of paper and mail them in where we would receive them in central office, and then we would be responsible for data entry after that. So now everything is electronic, and there's instant sample submission, and that saves time and reduces errors.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I'm still waiting for a few more questions. I see one for Ian, but I do have one more for Mike here as well. Have you encountered any issues with the functionality of the app?
I'll say generally, we've been pretty lucky. Some of the more rural counties that we have in the state have had some issues with receiving cell service. But as far as the app itself, although initially there were some validation errors when we were testing, they have since been patched, and they're essentially all fixed.
And how has the feedback been from the users that are using the app in the field?
Overwhelmingly, it's been very positive. A lot of our NPOs have said that once everything is set up and they're logged in, it's been really easy for them to use. Um, and it's been a huge time saver for them and their employees. I know one has said that, they can get so many more samples accomplished in one day being out in the field than the old way before.
Awesome. And I see one more question here, and I believe this might be for you, Mike. There's a question whether there's a limit to which devices can or are allowed to use the app.
Well, for us, there isn't really a limit. It could be an iPad. It could be Samsung. It could be, um, if you're able to access, an app store, you can download the app and basically log in with your credentials. We've had people using smartphones out in the field instead of tablets. So there is not necessarily a limit.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I think I'm going to move on to a few questions for Ian. I see one in here that mentions the length of time for this project. So what was the length of time?
It's a good question. It depends on how you want to look at this. We deployed the first iteration of the Universal Business Report back in 2018, and that's been being enhanced and developed on an ongoing basis as our needs have grown and changed over time since then. So you consider it a 6-year project. But on the other hand, I have reports that we went from ideation to implementation in less than a month. So it's a tough question to answer. I consider it an ongoing project for us. It's just become part of our normal business processes to build, develop, and deploy business applications.
Awesome. And then I see another question here that says, I saw that Power Platform has an AI Builder and Power Virtual Agents. Have you used the AI Builder or Power Virtual Agents, and how was your experience using it?
I have not stepped into using the AI Builder yet. That is something that we are interested in doing, especially as it relates to like transit related news and being able to curate that and keep, agency staff up to date on what's happening in the industry. And I've did explore Power Virtual Agents a little bit when it was first deployed, and from my perspective, it wasn't it didn't have the most user-friendly interface for implementation at the time. I don't know how that's changed since, because I haven't looked at it since, unfortunately. I wish I could give you a more helpful answer.
Thank you. A few more questions here. How hard is it to build charts and do calculations in Power BI?
It depends in large part on how available is the data to you right then and there. Do you already have some of that already created? Power BI has a drag and drop interface for building visuals, for building charts. So if the measures are already calculated, then you can build a new chart in a matter of seconds. It's fairly easy really trivial to build new ones. And the measures use formulas that are very similar to Excel. So if you have a lot of experience with writing Excel functions and formulas, you can usually create a new measure in fairly short order. It's on the order of minutes typically.
And compared to that, how long does it take to develop a new report?
New reports, again, it depends on the data issues. With the SAP example that we were talking about previously, getting the data available to us was the was the biggest barrier. We explored a lot of avenues in order to connect to the SAP data, and that probably looked at like 6 months worth of different like attempts and explorations. And then when we finally found a solution for getting access to the data, the report was developed in 2 weeks.
Okay. And now that it's completed, how much time do you spend on maintaining and updating reports?
Varies from report to report, but largely I don't do anything. Most of the processes are automated. When we want to update our SAP data, one program manager can go into SAP, run a single export, and it updates the entire data set. And it takes maybe 2 minutes to update, and everybody has access to the new data.
Okay. And you mentioned that training is available. Where would be a good place to start with that?
Microsoft Learning, I can't remember the actual URL, but if you type Microsoft Learning into whatever search engine, it should be your first result. They have their training materials and training programs divided up by application. And so you can actually go into there and select Power BI or Power Automate or Power Apps, and you can get curated training materials for whichever one you're working at whatever skill level you're coming into it with. And for the Power BI, they actually provide you with sample data sets to work with. So you don't even have to come in with your own data when you're using their trainings.
Great, awesome. All right, any other questions for our presenters before we wrap up this webinar this morning? Send them in now. I have another one here. How hard is it to build a script in Power Automate?
I keep giving the it depends question or answer. So for most things that you want to do in Power Automate, they have a lot of pre-built functions already defined, and you can drag and drop and search for the particular functionality, and they can provide you with like dynamic responses based off of previous selections. And if you're looking to do a fairly easy script, you can click a few times, have a script that runs anytime somebody updates a folder in SharePoint, and does whatever particular process you want to do, and it takes 1 to 2 minutes to deploy. If you want to do more complicated things, you might have to do a little bit of searching or do some trainings in order to learn how to take advantage of the advanced functions in Power Automate, and that can take a fair bit longer just with the testing process. And so there's some scripts that I built that took me a couple of days to actually figure out how to put together, because they required some more of the advanced functions. But now that they're there, they just run automatically, and I haven't looked at them in like 2 years, but they still run successfully.
Great. Okay. Well, maybe the last question for this morning before we close, how long does it take to build an app using Power Apps?
It depends again. Yeah, it's going to depend on what you want out of it. I've only interacted with the Canvas applications in Power Apps, so I can't speak to the portals or the model-driven applications. But the Canvas application, I spun up the very first version of our BPT app in an hour and a half. And it's been ongoing development. I have pages that took me days of testing and failure to figure out how to make work, and other ones where, I enhanced the functionality of actually the page that was screenshotted earlier in this presentation, and it took me less than an hour to add entirely new functionality to that page.
Awesome. So cool. All right. Well, I think this brings us to the end of our questions here. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jacqueline.
Okay, thank you, Anya. So we've had some great questions for our panelists today. And if you still have a question that has not been answered, you are always welcome to submit your questions to .innovations@pa.gov. And we can work with our panelists to provide responses to your questions following today's webinar. I'd like to thank Mike, Ian, and all of you for participating in today's session. We have two links in the chat box. The first is a quick feedback survey that we'd like you to complete. The second link again is to request one professional development hour for participating in today's webinar. Your feedback is valuable to us and will help us plan for future events. I'd also like to remind everyone to look out for the invitations for the 3 upcoming 2024 Innovation in Motion webinars for this year. If you have any innovative ideas to share for future webinars, we would love to hear from you. Please send your ideas to .innovations@pa.gov. And we just want to thank you all again for joining us today, and we look forward to your participation in future webinars.